Right up today, we have a Yamaha CR1020. And I have not come across a Yamaha CR1020 for probably going on 3 years. And then this one crossed my bench, and it just so happens that this was one of the earlier videos that I shot for the channel. This is the receiver that I fixed. I think there was a popping noise coming from it. So it's kind of interesting to see this receiver again. It's been working fine for the last 3 years. It developed a new issue, and like a goofball, I did not shoot the service video on it. It was a capacitor had failed in the power supply. Basically, there was this buzzing sound when you turn it on coming out of both channels. The buzzing would go away after about 15 minutes of warm up, and there was like a 10 microfarad capacitor, and I didn't shoot any video on it, and I should have, and I don't know why I didn't. It probably would have been interesting when I was tracking it down, but alas, I did not. But I will do a gear review on this. So these were manufactured between 1977 and 1980, direct coupled, 70 watts per channel. Series information. Depending upon the year, at least the catalogs that I found, the top of the line receiver, depending upon the year, when I looked at a 1977 catalog, the top of the line receiver was the 2020. In 1978, it was the 3020. 3020s are they're kind of unicorns. You don't see them. So, sometimes I have a hard time listing some of those unicorn receivers as top of the line because they didn't make many of them, and not many people could afford them in the day. And, for all intents and purposes, I'm going to go ahead and say this. This was really top of the line for like Joe Six-Pack, the regular consumer. This was top of the line because most people were not going to be able to afford a 3020 or a 2020. Other models they had 820, 620, 420 in those model or in those years within the model range. Aesthetics, uniquely Yamaha, right? There's no doubt this is a Yamaha. Sound is bright. Customizable, I put down in my notes, to an extent, I suppose. I was running a Yamaha, was it a 610, CA610-2 for quite a while, and I love that little integrated amplifier. I don't know why I stopped listening to it, but it was like one of my favorite integrateds, and I just haven't. I mean, I got rid of it years ago, but I've always had an affinity for Yamaha. They do have a very bright sound. This one is a very full sound, though. I mean, you can get it there, I should say. You can get it to a very full sound. Hookups are easy, typical hookups, spring-loaded speaker terminal, so that's good. Operation on this is complicated, though. So let's go over the features and functions. I'm gonna save this button here for last. I'm gonna come across to the top row of buttons here when I come back around. But we have power on and off. This is just a cover for A and B headphones. Speaker selector, so we have off, A, B, C, or A and B and A and C. Low and high filter. Bass, presence, and treble. Presence is kind of a mid, I suppose. Kind of a mid, I suppose. I guess that's how I would kind of describe how it works. If the owner's manual says something about what presence actually is, I will include it. I've always treated that as a mid. Makes sense. Bass, mid, and treble. You have a loudness contour. I have mixed feelings about the loudness contour on Yamahas. On one hand, it's nice to be able to control the loudness. How can I say this? Normal loudness switch on a receiver, you hit it and you get more bass, you get more treble at lower volumes, right? On Yamaha, the loudness contour allows you to kind of dial that in. However, you end up using a little bit more volume depending upon how you're shaping the contour. So whereas if I'm listening to a Pioneer 737 and I want more bass, I'm listening at low volumes, I just hit a button. right? With the Yamaha, you've got to dial in the loudness contour, and sometimes you have to turn it up. And I'm not going to say I don't like that. I kind of understand that, but it's just easier to have a button. I'll just be honest with you. Easier to have a button and just let me adjust it with the bass and the treble, right? So on one hand, you can really dial in the sound, but on the other hand, during unique situations, you may just want to hit a button. So that is, again, mixed emotions on that. We have mode, stereo, reverse, left, right, right, and left, record out selector knob, the input selector knob, volume, balance is the outer ring, tuning dial. Now I'm going to go back that way, if I can get it back to a station. And the tuner's pretty good on this. You can see it picking up a station in my basement without an antenna, so that's pretty decent. Audio muting, we have phono 1 and 2, tuner AM or FM. This is for muting, so this is the muting switch. FM blend, I'm going to have to look at the owner's manual, see what the heck FM blend is. I have no idea what it is. Dolby FM adapter. Then you have the meter button. So you can see, you can either have the meter set to speaker out or signal. So you can see when I move the dial, the signal meter jumps, or that second meter jumps as I'm tuning in a station, but then it goes right back to where now it's output for the speakers, right? So you can turn it up, you can see the meters jumping for the sound. If I hit this button, it's going to stay on the signal strength meter, right? So that one pops in and out like that. So that's slightly different. I can't think of anything else for the features and functions that are kind of different on the Yamaha other than that. And you do have another tuning meter as well, but this is just the signal strength. Serviceability on this. I would say this is definitely more of an advanced receiver, and a lot of that is just getting to things. Also, the circuit design is kind of convoluted on this with the distribution of power throughout it, and I'll just leave it at that. There are common issues with these, and those common issues are shared among all Yamaha receivers from this time period, and they are known to develop cracked solder joints probably per capita more than any other manufacturer's receiver, at least that I have come across. Early days of the channel, I was working on Yamahas all the time, and then it's been like a Yamaha vacuum. I haven't seen a Yamaha for a couple of years. So the cracked solder joints, that's a big thing. That's very common on these. Besides the cracked solder joints, you have normal issues with the receiver that's 40 going on 50 years old, out of spec capacitors. I don't know of any bad known bad transistors in these. This one had again a cap that just failed in the power supply. It just shorted. It failed open, right? So I had this really weird sound when you turn it on. It would just buzz, and the way I tracked that down was with some freeze spray. I just kind of started freezing components, because after it warmed up and the sound cleared up, I'm like, okay, something once it gets warm, right, it's fine once it's warm, but when it's cold, it doesn't want to work. So then I hit that one capacitor, and it went crazy on me, so I was able to isolate the issue. So besides the cracked solder joints and typical failing, aging, capacitors and transistors, I don't know of any other common issues on these. The funny thing was, though, when I first got this, I always, I'm laying in bed and I'm going to take the dog out, my wife's asleep, and I'm farting around on my iPad, and I'm always looking, okay, I got this Yamaha, and it's buzzing when I turn it on, so let's look at all the buzzing Yamaha threads on Audio Karma. Every single one I found, there was no resolution. So I was like, oh, what the heck what did I get myself into on this? Luckily, I was able to fumble through it and figure it out. But in doing my research for that, I didn't find any other issues. I didn't find any other common issues with these. I'm not saying there aren't any out there. I just don't know of any, according to the little bit of research that I did on this. Things that you should look for if you were considering picking one of these up. Oh, I'm sorry, I hit the thing with my foot. Sorry. Completeness, you want to make sure all the knobs and dials and everything is there. You want to make sure none of the glass is cracked or damaged. Illumination of the meters and the dial indicator. Interesting thing about Yamahas, well, this particular model, and I think it's some of the other models that are encased in the wooden cabinet. It's common to come across these with a dial cord that has been severed. So there's a clip that sits somewhere around here in the middle of the cabinet. And if you're removing, and it might be in the middle of the dial scale here, but when you're removing this from the cabinet, either during removal or during reassembly, the dial cord will actually sometimes snag on that, or it can actually cut it. It's a piece of metal. So you can get something trapped, you can get this wedge between there and actually cut the dial cord. So it's common. I've restrung 2 or 3 of these right over the last 4 or 5 years. And one just sold on Craigslist for, it wasn't very expensive. It was like $150. And they said that the dial did not move, right? The dial pointer did not move. So that is a common issue with these. So as you're looking for these, right, one of the things you will want to look at in the listing, especially if they say it's not working and they don't specify, see if there are images with the dial indicator, the dial pointer in different positions, or if they just say, hey, the dial pointer doesn't move, right? Because that cord was severed. Someone took it apart. They didn't know. When you take this apart, you move the dial pointer all the way to the right or all the way to the left, and then you've moved it out of the way, so you're safe. At least that's what I have become accustomed to doing. So completeness, operational condition, that dial, the dial pointer, if it moves or not, and then are the meters working, right? That can be an issue. And then general service history information, popping, right? That's very common with solder joints that are bad. So I would also pay attention to, is there any indication that that is popping or making a popping sound? Or an intermittent channel, a channel comes and goes, or the relay, the protection relay keeps tripping, something like that, right? Because those are all common with several issues, but definitely cracked solder joints can cause all of that, all of those issues, that popping sound and to lose a channel. So I'd look out for all of that stuff, and then it's just condition. Condition of the cabinet, condition of the face, condition of everything else. I was absolutely floored when I did my pricing information for this. I was way off. Thank goodness I did some research beforehand and I just didn't wing it. Sometimes I'll just wing it on these, and I'm typically pretty close. But I haven't looked at, or I haven't worked on one of these or seen one of these for a while. So I was shocked. At the top end, if you're looking to pick one of these up, one that's been recapped, restored, repaired, in a box, in perfect condition, over $1,200. And that absolutely shocks me. In my mind, I thought this would peg out at about $900. The fact that these will sell, and people are asking $1,300, $1,400 for these, and I don't think they're overpriced at that price. The ones that have been recapped and restored, and they have a box and they have the manuals and all that kind of stuff. There were several today when I edited the video, well, there were a couple that sold for more than $1,200. And again, I was absolutely shocked. Now I'm going to skip them. I'm going to do this a little bit differently. So the top end, we have over $1,200, $1,200 or more. Now let's talk about parts units. So I'm going to skip the middle for now. So top end, $1,200. Low end, there were several of these that sold. I think there were 3 or 4 that sold the day I recorded the video and did my research, that sold for less than $300. One sold for like $200 for parts are not working. Which, that surprised me. Well, that surprised me within the context of the top end being $1,200 and the for parts or repair units being under $300. Right? Normally you got a receiver that's worth $1,000. You're not going to be able to get one for parts for less than $400, $500. right? But this one was less than $300, or you could find a parts unit for less than $300 to repair if you wanted to. Amazing to me. Absolutely amazing to me. The user range was a lot wider than normal on these. So if you consider the fact that top end is over 12, for parts are less than 3, there were probably a dozen or more sales, and they were just spread throughout that entire range. I could not get a grasp on what a good working condition example of this would cost. They ranged all the way from $500 for one that was working in really good condition to a little over or about $1,000, right? With shipping, maybe a little bit more than $1,000. So split the difference between those two. A working, a working example of this, $750. But again, I could see one going for $1,000, and I could see one going for as little as $500. It was so bizarre, because normally I can figure out the ranges. With this one, I cannot figure out the range of that middle user range, right? So anywhere from 500 to 1,000. So we'll split the difference and say 750. So 300 low end, 750-ish with a huge spread, right? For one that's usable, that's a user unit, and then over $1,200 for one that's in pristine, recapped, restored condition. Nuts. Absolutely nuts. It just absolutely surprised me. So Yamaha Natural Sound stereo receiver CR1020 Yamahas. They're great. We cannot keep Yamahas in stock. Now we have some black Yamaha equipment from the 80s, and that's hung around quite a bit. But anytime we get a Yamaha 820, 620, 420, 1020, they're gone within sometimes a matter of days. Usually they don't last a couple of weeks. We haven't had a Yamaha receiver down at 402 vinyl for, I think it's been over a year, well over a year. And I would have shot a video on one if we had one come in. So it's been a minute. Great receivers, great receivers. Man, if you can get one, especially at a good price, snatch it up. With that spread, you could probably wait long enough to get a really good clean example for like $500, maybe even less, and have a really nice stereo receiver. They present well. They are big. This is almost the same width, right, as like the Pioneer 747 949 quad. In fact, I think this is almost exactly the same width as the 747. The 949 is a little bit bigger. So it takes up a lot of real estate. It's a big receiver, but man, they're good receivers. Once you get them sorted out, once you do some preventive maintenance, get some things figured out, they're really nice receivers. So I think I'm going to wrap it up here. As always, if you like what you see, like, hit subscribe. Catch you in the next video.